Hey guys, it's Linux Benchmarks here, and in today's video, I wanted to talk about why you should try Linux in 2024. And I think a lot of people who are running Windows right now may not know just how good the other side of the grass is, like the other side of the field, how green it actually is nowadays. And I wanted to list down some things of like why Linux is really good in 2024 or just in the future as how good Linux is just going to continue to be and improve and grow as a operating system. But do you know what else you should try? Today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Proton VPN, one of the most secure and private VPNs in the world with over 3K servers in 71 countries. Try it out for free to see if you like it with Proton VPN supporting Android, Windows, Mac OS, even Linux, the operating system that I use. Pay $10 a month with 30-day back guaranteed if you don't like it. Also, Proton VPN offers Proton Mail, one of my favorite mailing applications that protects your emails with end-to-end encryption, so no one can read them at all, no matter how hard they try. If you really want to try what Proton VPN has to offer, go to the link in the description and sign up today. Now, I think I would give like a quick answer to this, just so if anyone is like, they don't want to watch the video or whatever. So should you try Linux in 2024? Yes, of course you should. It's a great operating system. It has the majority of things that you need. If you are someone who, runs productivity applications, that may be like, I don't know, Photoshop, or you may run some Microsoft Suite apps, create a dual boot just to try it, because you'd be surprised how many alternatives there are to a lot of those applications that run a lot better and may have all the tools that you need. I know when I moved over to Linux, there was a lot of productivity apps that I used on Windows that no longer worked, and I ended up just using the alternatives because they didn't run great through Wine, like Photoshop, for example. It doesn't really run that amazing through Wine, so I just switched to the alternatives, and my experience was great. So short answer, yes, you should try Linux. I think you should try and create a dual boot and install it. But if you want to continue watching, I'll list really big reasons why you should try Linux and possibly stop using Windows like I have. I don't even have Windows installed anymore. But here's some reasons why you should try Linux in 2024. So the first one is installing Linux is easy nowadays. I just mentioned that before. It's really easy to install Linux. You have tons and tons of distros to choose from. Now, this might be really like overwhelming, all these choices, but it's really simple to understand that most of these distros are just based on other distros. So, example, like Pop! OS is just based on Ubuntu. Ubuntu is based on Debian. So what you should be installing is Debian, but you might want to install Pop! OS or Ubuntu because of what they have pre-installed for you. So that's where like people do this like distro hopping thing. For the majority of part, like the installers, there is a couple different types of installers that they use. Like Ubuntu has their own that's made in like Flutter, which is one of Google's code. But then you have also like Calamari, which is what lots of other distros use, like Nobora uses that. Arch, I'm pretty sure Endeavour OS uses that. And these installers are really good at partitioning your drives, other things like formatting and all that stuff. It does all that stuff properly, and it's able to do it quickly for you. You're able to configure things to what you'd like, creating your username and password. For example, creating a local account is really easy. You don't actually have to have an online account like you do on Windows usually, where Windows will try and force you to use a online Microsoft account, while on Linux you just create a user account, because there's no point to having an online account. I don't see the point in that really. You don't have to really do much when it comes to installing Linux. The first part of installing Linux is really easy, and I think anyone that's ever installed an operating system before from scratch, like Windows, they should be able to understand it. And I guess the next thing that we could go into is how you install software. And this is also can be very overwhelming because there's so many different package managers and just ways of installing an application, and that might be really confusing for some people. Of course, the majority of the way that you install software is going to be through like a type of store. So instead of going into a browser to find a .exe, you just go to your store, and this will be just a front end GUI store. It's not like it'll be connected really to anything, but then you have repositories behind it in the back end which are usually your distro's repositories, and then you usually have the FlatHub repository enabled as well, which is a basically a containerized package. We have all these thousands of applications in this FlatHub repository that you get to access for free, and you can just open it. So I'll show an example here. Here's my desktop at the moment, and one of the stores that I use is just called Discover, which is what KDE Plasma uses. Another one that would be is GNOME Software, which is on the GNOME desktop, and it's really easy. You know, if you've already got a couple applications here that some people would install, you got Firefox, VLC, Spotify, Telegram. So like Spotify, for example, here it is. You can just launch it, you can remove it, and it'll give you information about your version, where it's from. So I've got the Flatpak version, which is coming from the FlatHub repository, and you can easily go to the FlatHub website as well if you want to scroll through a bunch of different applications just to see if you have applications there. I'll link it down below so you can go look at it, so that when you do install Linux, you can just go into your store and you can just grab your applications. That's one of the things that I like about Linux. It's really easy to grab your applications, and even if you don't want to use the store, right, there's another way. You can just open up a terminal and you can install it through here. So I could just do like Flatpak install, and then you would type the application that you want to install, select it, and then it would install it. Or for me, I'm on Endeavour OS, so I'm using Arch, so I'm just going to use the yay command, and I'm just going to do, I don't know, Cosmic, which is a desktop that I've been testing, and it'll come up with a bunch of different results that you can select from. One is from the Chaotic AUR, which is a repository for AUR packages that are already pre-built for you, so you don't have to build these packages manually. But usually you would want to build these manually. But that's just another way of installing packages, which, you know, I think that's one of the great things about Linux is there's variety, and that can be overwhelming for some people. But when you understand it, it's really easy to just understand what packages you want to use, which ones you should use for your use case. You know, there's other ones like .app images. That's another one that is really popular, and that's really easy to use. It would just go to the application's website that stores that .app image, because .app image is trying to be similar to a .exe where you download it off a website and then you would just run it inside of your file manager. That's the way our .app images work. So for example, like I wanted to run Yuzu early access, so I was on like Fedora at the time, so I would have to grab the .app image to get that early access build, and then I could just run it in the file manager. So that's one other way, another package manager that's works really well, I would say. And that's one of the things I like about Linux, is just really easy to install your applications. You don't really have to mess around with .exes and go to all these websites. And I think even for like older people who are scared of going onto a browser to download a .exe because they might click the wrong link. And this happens a lot, where Google will show the wrong ads on their search engine, and it will be like a version of the OBS website that will be will have malware in the .exe, and then boom, you'll have a virus installed on your computer. So I feel like this is really good for lots of people because they won't get malware or viruses because you're downloading it from an officially maintained repository / server with all these applications are tested and looked through. And for example, like Flatpak packages, they have to go through a bunch of different maintainers to make sure that application doesn't have malware or anything bad in it, and they have to go through different like checks of like, oh, does the design process look correctly, to make sure that everything is like seamless and correct, so then no one gets a virus. Now, one of the misleading things that I think a lot of people think about when it comes to open source is that open source is bad. We shouldn't have open source. Everything should be proprietary, so that everything's private and no one can access code, so then they can like, you know, attack it and put viruses in it or something. But that's the complete opposite. If that was the case, why is all the servers in the goddamn world using the Linux kernel for their servers? That's my question. People that think that, you know, proprietaries is a really good thing and that we should all use it, when literal servers run the Linux kernel. The Linux kernel is open source. You can go look at the mailing list. You can go look at all the code that's being contributed to it. It has to go through Linus Torvalds. You know, so open source is actually a good thing. When you look at a project, for example, like an application like Bottles, for example, this is a wine manager where you can create these wine prefixes and install applications, Windows applications and games through it. It's like I've got a Rockstar bottle here that I can just launch, if I want to, so we can launch it here. And it's just like, you can go to bottles if you wanted to. We can go to the about, and we can go to probably like details, their website, and we can just browse through their website, and then we can go to like their bug reporting, which is on GitHub, and this is where we can look at literal like all the code if we want to. We could go to its activity to see what developers are publishing. Like we had an update today, which was 51.11. And then, things like they show the change log, for example. So open source is a really good thing. And I think a lot of people should start using open source applications more, and of course donating to those projects, because these people don't make money off of this really. Either they have sponsorships, like on Linux, with a majority of desktop environments, like KDE Plasma, for example, they make purely off of donations. They do have a couple sponsorships, and I'm pretty sure Valve, people who make Steam, they also donate to KDE Plasma and help them out with development so that KDE Plasma can work on the Steam Deck. Because if you don't know, KDE Plasma is installed on the Steam Deck. And yeah, I think, open source is a really good thing. And I think a lot of people should start using more open source applications. Now, the next thing that might surprise you is drivers. Now, on Windows, the majority of the time, your drivers will just be pre-installed. If you buy a computer from a store, or you buy a pre-built or a custom-built pre-built PC, like when I first grabbed my custom PC, I bought it from a PC store that builds custom PCs that are already pre-built. So I already had Windows installed on it. But if you do build a custom PC, then you would know that you do have to install Windows manually. You have to grab a USB, or you buy one from a PC store, or you just download Windows online for free, and then you just chuck it on a USB and you install it. You'll have your drivers will be pre-installed the majority of the time, like your GPU drivers, and on Linux, it's mostly the exact same thing, except for NVIDIA. But even then, lots of distros like Pop! OS, Nobora, EndeavourOS, they will pre-install the NVIDIA drivers for you. So when it comes to, Linux drivers, especially on the NVIDIA side, because on AMD and Intel, your drivers are already pre-installed because they're open source drivers, so they're already in the Linux kernel for you. So when you install a Linux distro, they're already installed for you, and you can just start using them right away. But for NVIDIA, you do have really good GUI managers for installing NVIDIA drivers. So if you want to, you want to install your latest proprietary NVIDIA drivers, then it's really easy to do so. Lots of Ubuntu based distros like Pop! OS, they have little GUI managers for installing drivers. Or if you're on Fedora, you would just go to the GNOME software store to grab the NVIDIA driver. So when it comes to drivers and stuff like that, all that stuff is pre-installed for you. You don't really have to muck around with anything. You don't have to open a terminal window to install the drivers. It's really just easy to do. And when it comes to overclocking, for example, I have an app called Lact, which is for overclocking my AMD GPU, and it's really basic. It has some simple sliders for power draw, clock speeds, voltage offsets. You can look at your thermals, you can change your fan curve, you can look at the version that this is running, and then the information of your card. So you have a lot of options when you want to, if you want to be a power user. A lot of that stuff is already included for you. You can grab Lact, you can grab Core Control. It's another one for overclocking or undervolting your GPU. And the next thing that I've seen over the next past year of using Linux is that desktop environments have been getting really stable and introducing things that close the gap of a lot of things that people need in a desktop environment. There's a lot of accessibility options that are still missing, but those are being added through the GNOME desktop at the moment, because I think it's the European government has decided to start funding the GNOME project for adding accessibility options, which is really good to see. For me personally, KDE Plasma, it suits everything that I need. I'm running it through Wayland right now, and I was playing games on it yesterday, and it works fine. Changing things, like you got your settings here, you can change your appearance, you can go to your notifications to change that, start up and shut down, input devices. If you want to look at your game controller, your mouse, your keyboard, everything's already there for you. So when it comes to GUI stuff, that stuff is already there for you. Unless you're someone who may have a disability, that might become, Linux may not be the option for you yet. I would say maybe in a year's time, you might be able to use GNOME or KDE for, with like accessibility options enabled to use the desktop. That might be possible by then. But for the majority of people, desktop environments are already really good. And I think one of the other good things, and this leads back to the open source stuff, is if let's say a desktop environment wants to bring in a new feature, like someone in the project decides to propose a new feature, it has to get looked at and discussed by hundreds of people who are in that project. And this can be anyone. I'm pretty sure anyone can comment on the majority of those things. Like for a KDE Plasma, you go to their GitLab and you can have a look at their merge request, and you can discuss with the KDE developers about if something is, if you want that certain feature in the KDE Plasma desktop project or not. And this can be discussed forever. And that's why, like, for example, GNOME, they discuss things for a very long time. And that's why things like, let's say, FreeSync/VIR isn't enabled in GNOME yet, because it's been discussed for a very long time. As the majority of those developers who work at GNOME, they don't play games, so it's like kind of hard for them to understand why they would need VIR in their desktop. But they actually are adding VR finally in GNOME 46. That's really good to see. But it's stuff like that where you get to decide if something gets merged or not, and if people agree with you. If people don't agree with you, then it actually may still get merged. But I think that's one of the other really good things, is you get to contribute and you get to discuss things with other developers who are making these things become like a reality. And then, like I said before, if you don't like something being merged, if you're, some desktop environment you don't like, well, you don't have to use it. That's one of the great things about Linux, is there's choice. On Windows, you have one desktop environment, and that's Windows, and that's it. There's nothing else you can choose from. On Linux, there's tons of desktop environments to choose from. There's tons of package managers to choose from. There's tons of applications to choose from. Like when it comes to like overclocking stuff, you have LAC, you have core control. When it comes to system monitors, there's the KDE Plasma one here, or there's this one that was made, and there's like 4 other ones you can choose from. Or if you want to choose a terminal based one, like I'm pretty sure I have which one was it? Was it NVTop? I'm pretty sure. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. And you could use this if you want to, which is just a terminal based one for looking at your processors, your GPU, your CPU. So it's stuff like that where you have choice. If you don't like something, you can just use something else. Or if you're really into coding, you could just make something your own. You could just make an application for yourself, and that would probably suit your needs. Now, one of the big things that have always made people switch away from Linux has been the gaming experience, which has been growing so much when it comes to development work. So you got things like Proton, and this is thanks to Valve working super hard on it for the Steam Deck. Because if you don't know, Steam Deck runs Linux, and it runs Proton for its games. So Valve has been increasing development on that for the past like 2 years, I would say. And over those 2 years, hundreds, thousands of games have been supported and now are just running flawlessly on Linux, either it be through AMD, NVIDIA, or even Intel with their Arc GPUs. Even though on Intel Arc, DirectX 12 games have some issues still. So if you run an Intel Arc card, I would test Linux, but don't be surprised if you try to run a DirectX 12 game and the game doesn't work or it has issues, because Intel's still working on that and the Proton devs are still working on that as well. If you're running AMD or NVIDIA, the experience you have running games through Proton is really good. It's honestly amazing how good Proton has gotten over the past 2 years. And like the development with like DXVK and VKD3D, which if you don't know, that those are translation layers for translating DirectX 9, 10, 11 for DXVK, and then DirectX 12 for VKD3D. So there's games like, for example, the Finals that got supported around 2 weeks ago through Proton after hundreds of people asked the Finals developers to bring support, and it finally did get supported on Proton. So now you can actually just play that game, and it took like probably a couple days for like little issues to be fixed. Like for example, you couldn't talk to people in voice chat because the game would crash. So what ended up happening is that it took like a couple days for the Proton developers to fix those things. Not even a couple days, I mean like 2 days it took for them to fix the voice chat problem. And then on the AMD side, Mesa 24 came out yesterday, and that improved the frame timing of the Finals. and probably improve some other games as well. As I remember, the VKD3D developer who recently applied like a patch for improving FPS or frame timing, just an improvement. It said that you would need Mesa 24, which came out yesterday. So we've got all these improvements, and that's why I think gaming on Linux is really good, because we've got all this development working. And so when it comes to just using your desktop and getting these updates, when it comes to becoming a playing games on Linux nowadays, it's really good. If you're on Nvidia, then it might be a bit of a hassle. You might have some games that might not work properly because you have to use the proprietary drivers, and the proprietary drivers aren't that great, I would say, for specific games. But for the majority of games, they should work really well. I did use an RTX 2060 for around a year and a half on Linux, and it was a decent experience if you're running on X11. If you're running on Wayland, you'll experience probably some issues because, like I said, the driver isn't ready for Wayland yet, and some games don't work really that well. But if we have a look at other things like modding, modding has gotten really good through Proton, where you can mostly trade a prefix, like a Wine prefix, install Nexus mods mod launcher in that Wine prefix, and then install that game that you want to run mods on, and then download all the mods that you need through that mod launcher, and then launch the game. And it should just use those mods properly because it's just a Wine prefix, which it just runs in a Windows environment. The only problem that you might have is some mods, like for example, third-party.exes. Like if you want to run like an online mod, those things may not work through those mod launchers. I've had some decent luck with things like Elden Ring, like when that had an online mod that worked through Linux properly. I was able to do it through Steam, which was really surprising that it was able to work, and that was over a year and a half ago, and that's when Linux gaming wasn't even really that amazing necessarily. It was still in its like development processes, where there was still a lot of games that didn't work because of like anti-cheat problems. And that's my next one, which is anti-cheat. So anti-cheat has been a big thing recently, where game developers want to add kernel level anti-cheats to their games, which I think is a load of crap. You don't need to add kernel level anti-cheats. They are stupid. You honestly, if you want to ban people, you shouldn't need a kernel level anti-cheat. You just need a huge support team, which costs money, I know that, but that's the way you get people banned, is you need lots and lots of support people working for you to ban those people. Without that, then you can't ban people. A kernel level anti-cheat just tries to delay the user who's trying to cheat, which I think is stupid, because they'll just learn a way to get around it as per usual. Some games on Linux don't work because of that kernel level anti-cheat. For example, like Valorant, that doesn't work. I'm pretty sure things like Fortnite, even though that uses a combination of like EAC and BattlEye, they use some intrusive versions of those anti-cheats, so that's why it doesn't work. And I definitely think Fortnite should be supported on Linux, even though I will never play it. It should be supported. Tim Sweeney should really start caring about Linux, I would say. But there's some games that still don't work. So basically, it's only the kernel level anti-cheats, but the rest work really well through anti-cheats. So for example, like the Finals, that uses EAC, that works through Linux. Plus they have another anti-cheat behind it, which is their own, and that works with Linux, so they added support for that. I think if you don't play Call of Duty, you don't play Rainbow Six Siege, you don't play Destiny 2, you don't play Fortnite, you don't play PUBG, you don't play Valorant, then I think you should definitely try Linux, or like I said before, you should try and create a build boot system, so then you can actually test out these games to see how well they perform. But like the annoying thing I would say is that there's a lot of games that can work on Linux with the anti-cheats that they do use. For example, Rainbow Six Siege can work on Linux. It even launches. You can go into the training mode and muck around in that, but you can't connect to an online match, which I think is a load of horse crap. I think R6 developers, please bring Linux support through Proton. I know BattlEye works through Proton. It wouldn't be that hard to add. I know there is a big cheating issue on Rainbow at the moment, but they should just add it anyways and just get a bigger support team, so then they can ban more people. Yeah, if another game like Destiny, that can work on Linux as well. And they even asked the community if they wanted Proton to be enabled, and that Reddit forum is still up. So if you want Proton to work with Destiny, you should definitely go to that Reddit forum post and comment on that post saying that you want Linux to be supported on Destiny, because I would like to play Destiny, even though most of the time you have to pay for a lot of things to get like DLC content and stuff like that. But I still would want that to be available so that I can play like Crucible and stuff like that, and some Strikes, because I do like playing that with my friends. But since Destiny isn't supported on Linux, I just have to go play other games, which is fine by me, honestly. I just get to work on more Linux videos, or I can just play more hours on other games like Overwatch, Apex, the finals. If we go into the other thing like emulation, I think this is one of the best things about Linux is you have Vulkan and OpenGL, which is implemented so well on Linux that when it comes to playing games on Linux through DXVK and VKD3D, because if you don't know, that gets translated to Vulkan, but on things like Minecraft, and then when you have emulation, so like Yuzu, RPCS3, what else we got? We got Cemu. All these games run extremely well, and that's why people recommend you install Linux on like a Raspberry Pi or something, because if you want to play emulation, you would want Linux, as it's a pretty lightweight system for how it handles things, and that's why emulation runs so well. Plus, with those APIs like Vulkan and OpenGL, it makes a really good experience when you want to play games through that. So I would say if you don't play those games specifically, the ones that have kernel level anti-cheats, or ones that just simply don't want to be supported on Linux, then you should definitely trade a dual boot, see how it goes. And if you really want to run Linux, you can just remove Windows. And the last thing I would say is probably the professional work of Linux, which is a pretty controversial topic, because a lot of people, they want to use Adobe Photoshop, they want to use Adobe Premiere, they want to use I don't know, some music production applications, or they want to edit videos, like I said, in Premiere, all through Sony Vegas, and they're like, oh well, that doesn't work on Linux, so I'm not going to move to Linux. And that's fair, but hear me out. If you do want to move to Linux, there is alternatives. So you have Kdenlive, which is for editing. Now I know that's a very basic one, but you can use, there is another one which I forgot the name of, but it's a very popular one, DaVinci Resolve. So you could run DaVinci Resolve on Linux, and it is quite easy to install, but I'm not really that much of a professional editor, so I just use Kdenlive because it works, and it's pretty easy to edit videos on that. But when it comes to like Adobe Photoshop, you have GIMP. Now people are like, oh, GIMP, that's terrible. Why would you use that? Well, it's for one, it's open source, and two, the majority of things that I did in Adobe Photoshop, they work in GIMP. So when it comes to like adding stroke to text font, or I don't know, opening up a GFX pack, all that stuff works properly for me, and I'm able to create thumbnails like the thumbnails you see on my videos. Those are all done through GIMP, and they look pretty okay, I would say. They're definitely not like top tier thumbnails, but they definitely do get the job done, and they send the right message when it comes to a thumbnail. So when it comes to like professional work, there is alternatives to those applications for either it be Adobe Photoshop, Premiere, whatever. There is alternatives for that. And even when it comes to like office work, you have things like LibreOffice, you have OpenOffice. Those things do the exact same thing as what the Microsoft Office apps do. So in the end, should you move to Linux in 2024? Yes, you should. Lots of other people have posted videos about this, that you should move off of Windows, and I definitely do agree with that. You should stop using Windows. It is a pretty mediocre operating system at this point. There is other options to choose from, and I understand if you want to continue using Windows, if you like Windows, that's perfectly fine. I used to love Windows like 5 years ago. I really used to enjoy using it, but now that Windows is shifting into the AI space of things, and they're trying to implement AI things into the operating system and force more things onto Windows 11 users, and I think Windows 12 is coming out soon with more AI features and things that you just won't be able to really control necessarily, because it's Windows. They have control of your operating system. If you really think you own Windows, you really don't. While on Linux, if you don't like something, you can easily remove it, switch off it, install something else. It's really your choice. So if you did enjoy this video, please give it a like. I would really appreciate it. And of course, you can definitely subscribe to the channel. And if you want to, you can even, what's it called? The subscriptions. You can subscribe to me through subscriptions, I think is what it's called. A supporter. You can become a supporter of mine. I always forget about that because it doesn't really matter. You don't need to become a supporter on my channel, but I would like to thank the 2 supporters that are on my channel. I do thank you guys for, spending your money every month on me so then you can continue to make these videos. I really do appreciate it, and I would see you guys in the next video. Peace.